Baton Rouge, and there we were in Edina in a hotel, working to make sure that we did everything we could for those people, but always respecting the great American hero, John McCain. Senator McCain came to our meetings many times. When he walked into a room, people stood and they applauded even before he spoke. And so it was just 4 years ago, ladies and gentlemen, that we were in Cleveland, Ohio. There we were with the National League of Cities and our current president, Mick Cornett of Oklahoma City. And he addressed that convention as we met there to nominate President Trump and Vice President Pence. December the 15th, 2016, the mayors went to Trump Tower. Mrs. Kautz was there, Mr. Benjamin, Mr. Cornett, and Mr. Mayors Landrieu. And we talked to the president about infrastructure. We talked to him about how he could save our municipal bonds that were being threatened. And he came through on the municipal bonds, and we're all continuing to work on infrastructure. Today, on this call, we have several outstanding Republican mayors. But ladies and gentlemen, we have Republican mayors throughout the United States involved in this bipartisan organization. Findlay, Ohio, Arlington, Texas, Fort Worth, Texas, Carmel, Indiana, Oklahoma City, all involved in the United States Bipartisan Conference of Mayors. So let's start with our program today. And to lead it off, we have Acquanetta Warren of Fontana, California. Now, she is chair of the Republican Mayors Group, and they call themselves the CLA, but Community Leaders of America. She's chair of that, but she's also she's vice chair of our Youth Involvement Task Force, very involved passionately with young people throughout the nation, and she's chair of our Manufacturing and Career and Technical Education. But when I met her, she said, without me, Arnold Schwarzenegger could not have been elected governor. So she supported the Terminator. She's a strong Republican for all Americans. Let's hear it from Acquanetta of Fontana.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us for the Mayor's 2020 Vision, an American breakthrough event. I'm so glad to be joined by my fellow mayors today as we look forward to discussing a bold, shared vision for the future of the country. I am Acquanetta Warren, Mayor of Fontana, California, and Chairwoman of the Community Leaders of America and the Forum for Community Leaders, the National Forum for Republican Mayors, City Council members, and county executives. I look forward to our dialogue today as we discuss our recommendations for how the United States can stage a strong economic recovery post-COVID-19 and ensure that mayors are at the forefront of an urgent breakthrough to address economic inequality and racial disparities in America. As we all know, cities of all sizes across the country are experiencing significant revenue shortfalls as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and are in dire need of immediate and near-term infusions of direct and flexible funding. This aid is crucial to prevent furloughs and layoffs of very frontline workers most needed to respond to the public health crisis and bring the country out of economic crisis it now faces. And fiscal relief is particularly important in restoring the nation's economic output, since it will be the mayors and other local leaders who will have to help lead the recovery. Recently, I had the honor of working in a bipartisan fashion with Mayor Eric Garcetti, president of the National Conference of Democratic Mayors, on a letter to our Congress and Senate leaders. This letter provided the detail of how local budgets have been hit hard with decreased revenue from sales tax and lack of any state county assistance. Direct funding from the CARES Act was not given to cities under 500,000, where over 72% of the nation population resides. Our request for direct federal assistance to cities, regardless of population, is to avoid the elimination of essential services in our communities. This elimination of these services will include public safety, community services, and capital improvement projects that have been planned to restore aging infrastructure throughout our nation. We ask our leaders to use three principles to guide their decision making. One, funding must be directly allocated to cities, especially to cities under 500,000 in population. Two, mayors and local governments must be able to utilize this funding in a flexible way that includes making up for revenue loss by the evaporation of economic activity due to the pandemic. If local businesses are going to open doing the best they can to be responsible, they need to know that our city, state, and national government leaders will have their back. If we don't make it safe for them to open, the economy will fail. So, our first call to action is to secure immediate, direct, and significant federal aid to local governments on the order of at least $250 billion of fiscal assistance over and above state aid. This must be provided immediately to get localities through budgeting for the next fiscal year, 2021. The national mayors speak with one voice on this issue, and it is crucial to secure our economic recovery. It is also important that Congress and the administration continue to have the back of all of our cities and towns, as well as the businesses, both large and small, who are working to reopen safely, responsibly, and effectively in our communities. But I want to raise another crucial issue that speaks to my leadership role at the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and that is my work as chair of the U.S. Conference of Mayors Manufacturing, Career, and Technical Education Task Force. To bolster job creation and ensure that more jobs and businesses are not lost, we must support American companies and U.S. manufacturing. COVID-19 exposed the nation's vulnerability to global supply chain shocks, but it became evident that China was our primary source for surgical masks, ventilators, hazmat suits, rubber gloves, and medicine. This alarming dependence on China is harmful to our healthcare, national security, and economic well-being. Going forward, we must hedge our supply chain strategy by spreading risk and also bring supply chains back within the U.S. to spur productivity and innovation, both key elements of economic recovery. We must rebuild the industries that once made America prosperous and bring back the critical manufacturing needed in the 21st century economy. Everything from pharmaceuticals, medical supplies, to steel, renewable energy systems, and wireless technologies. As new developments in technology, artificial intelligence, and COVID-19 reshape the workforce, mayors will need to prepare for a rapidly changing job landscape with widespread voter displacement, particularly for African Americans, minority families, and other disadvantaged communities. Disconnected youth and young people of color in particular have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. The question of the moment is, how can we move our cities and our entire country forward to a stronger, healthier place where everyone is included in the future of work, regardless of their background? Interventions in areas related to skills and capabilities can help stem the challenges we are facing. We must expand access to a diverse range of education and training opportunities, particularly for underserved populations, to create additional pathways to better occupations. This includes short-term training opportunities in the fields of healthcare, manufacturing, and technology. This past Thursday, weekly unemployment insurance numbers rose once again to over 1 million claims. Over the course of the pandemic, millions have lost their jobs, and the unemployment rate currently stands at over 10%. While the COVID-19 pandemic did not create the health and economic disparities among racial and ethnic minorities, it served to highlight the existing disparities. Minorities are overrepresented in occupations most likely to be affected by the economic crisis, office support, food services, and food production work industries. The longer the pandemic and resulting economic crisis persists, the more severe the impact on racial and ethnic minority families will be. For a successful return to work in the 21st century, mayors must determine how best to retrain workers whose jobs will be gone when the pandemic subsides. So I want to make the call for particular attention to that issue and strong investments in our nation's young people to build new skill sets for emerging jobs to ensure a successful transition to a 21st century economy. This is not and should not be a partisan issue. This virus makes it clear that it does not care whether you are a Democrat or a Republican, or you live in a blue state or a red state. We mayors believe that this is not a blue or red issue. This is a red, white, and blue solution. And with that, I open the floor to my colleague mayors to share their thoughts on our mayor's 2020 vision, an American breakthrough document.
Thank you so much for your passion and your leadership on all of these issues. We certainly will continue to support everything that you have suggested. And so now we go to our next speaker. He is our 77th president, immediate past president of the United States Conference of Mayors, Bryan Barnett of Rochester Hills, Michigan. Mayor Barnett was elected as our president June a year ago in Hawaii. It was a beautiful, beautiful time there. America was beautiful and everything was going along wonderful. But bless his heart, as we say down south, when he became president, things started to happen. He led us through the Dayton shootings. He led us through the El Paso shootings. He led us through border issues. And he had our first ever meeting, led our first ever meeting with Mexican and Canadian mayors in Mexico at the request of the president of Mexico. So it was our first ever meeting with the president of Mexico. And from that, we saw the results with this trade bill that was signed. Also, he led us to Waterloo, Iowa, where we released our 2020 vision for America. And then COVID hit us. And then we have this economic crisis. And he led us through that with virtually webinars, Zoom meetings in the first ever annual meeting this past June. So we got through it. We appreciate his leadership, and he continues to fight for the things that Mayor Warren also mentioned. Ladies and gentlemen, our immediate past president of the United States Conference of Mayors, Mayor Bryan Barnett of Rochester Hills, Michigan.
Well, thank you, Tom, President Fischer, and to all of my fellow colleagues and mayors joining us today. It's always a privilege to be able to see you, chat with you, and for us to continue our work together. I will only just briefly put a fine exclamation point on what Mayor Warren presented so passionately, and that is just to echo my support and call for a direct fiscal assistance to cities. As I believe everyone on this call, is a city under 500,000 and are still certainly looking for that federal support in that federally supported, locally executed plan to defeat COVID. And we'll continue our work with our colleagues in Congress and the administration on that as we move forward. Well, we find ourselves at an interesting place. We're in the middle of convention season. And if you do what we do for a living, this is like our Olympics. We gather every 4 years. And if you're in public service and you enjoy politics, this is can't miss television and a lot of great conversations. And as mayors, I think we should, at least I am personally really excited about the theme of this year's Republican National Convention, which of course is honoring the great American story. And the reason I am attracted to that title is because I think so much of what we do as mayors is storytell. We hear stories from our residents and we listen to figure out ways we can impact their lives. It means we need both an ability to be plugged in at home to hear the stories and an ability to be plugged in elsewhere to find people that can affect the change that we need for our communities. And I think that's what I'm really proud about over the last year is the relationship that we have had with the administration. The ability that they have given us to tell those stories, the stories on the streets of American cities, and then plugging us into the support systems and networks in order to affect change in those same communities. Over the past year, as I mentioned, we've been blessed to build several strong key relationships that have paid major dividends for the conference and its member mayors. Certainly happy to cultivate the relationship with Doug Holscher, the director of the White House Office of Intergovernmental Affairs, and the deputy director, someone whose phone number everyone on the screen has, William Crozier. Both have been wonderful advocates for mayors and the needs of our cities, and both have indicated a need to help. Based on that relationship, the administration has provided what I believe to be exceptional ongoing access to cabinet members, policy experts, those leading the coronavirus response, and really, frankly, to the president himself. So give me just a minute. Let me tell you a couple stories of actually how that has played out over the past year. Going back to the beginning of at least my presidency, when we took a group of mayors to, at the time, what was the hot issue of the day, immigration. And we went to the southern U.S. border and discussed immigration issues with then acting U.S. Secretary of Homeland Security, Kevin McAlealan. And the mayors in attendance, including Mayor Giles, who's here with us today, experienced firsthand what it was like for those crossing the border. It was an enlightening and beneficial experience that helped all of us understand the complexities of immigration and helped us to be more well-versed on that issue back home. We've also had following that meeting, direct and very productive dialogue with Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin about opportunity zones. The administration solicited and appreciated input, and I truly believe Mayor Fischer was there, Mayor Duggan from the city of Detroit, I and others, that our input was not only solicited, but it was interjected into the conversation and ended up being a part of the opportunity zone plan as it was released. I believe that they valued mayors enough to help us craft the language that is impacting opportunity zones in our communities. And that's really important because the opportunity zone initiative has been something that has benefited really all of us. All of us have had a chance to utilize that tool from an economic development standpoint, whether you're from Miami or Mesa, Fontana or Burnsville, or even my city. We all have opportunity zones and have all been able to utilize them for positive good in our community, something certainly that's been beneficial. Additionally, as Mayor Warren mentioned, there's been wide bipartisan support for the U.S.-Mexico Canada Trade Agreement, the USMCA. I was fortunate enough to be there in January to represent the conference at the signing of the bill. And that really has been, especially coming from Southeast Michigan, a huge win for manufacturers and manufacturing companies here in Southeast Michigan, and of course, for farmers in the Midwest and folks all across the country. That is something that the conference has celebrated and supported. That dovetails into some additional work that we've worked on with the administration, with the American Workforce Policy Advisory Board and the National Council for the American Worker. Was able to work with several members of the administration on policy issues here that, again, as Mayor Warren mentioned, are incredibly important as we talk about developing the workforce of the future. In this past January, America's mayors were invited to the White House for discussion with policy leaders from Kellyanne Conway to Jerron Smith to HUD Secretary Ben Carson and Jovita Carranza. Over the last several months, we've had additional opportunities to interface with Transportation Secretary Chow, Commerce Secretary Ross, Education Secretary DeVos, and National Economic Advisor Larry Kudlow. In addition to that, the administration brought forward and made available to all of the nation's mayors the leading voices on the coronavirus response, with Dr. Deborah Birx speaking several times and CDC Director Dr. Robert Redfield, all designed to help us where we are meeting the needs and challenges we have. The pandemic, the economy, our security, all of these are issues that mayors are facing on a daily basis, and all of them examples of when and how the administration has supported America's mayors. And as a footnote, and this includes a progress report that even today at 4 o'clock today, we have another meeting led by some of the folks I talked about an update on opportunity zones. They're constantly communicating. Again, while we don't always agree on everything with all of our mayoral colleagues, they're providing information and providing support. So part of honoring the great American story, as I'm sure we'll hear about over the next 4 days, is honoring the heritage and history of the U.S. Conference of Mayors and upholding the bipartisan conversation that we've had for 88 years. But conversation cannot happen in a vacuum. You must have access. And to that end, we are very thankful for the access the administration has provided mayors and our key stakeholders. It's this access and dialogue that will preserve the honor of this great American story. So we look forward to the convention, and now we look forward to remarks from one of our past presidents, the great mayor of Burnsville, Minnesota, my friend, Mayor Elizabeth Kautz. Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Barnett. And you're right, from Burnsville, Minnesota, elected as our president in 2009, Mayor Elizabeth Kautz. She led the global effort on climate change. She was our leader in COP21 in Copenhagen. When we could not get into the halls, the Euro Cities groups got us in because of her championship for climate issues like that throughout America and the nation. She continues to give us strong support, advocating need for support of small businesses. And also she is the chair of the Finance and Audit Committee. And we have to have those resources, and we're so grateful for her continued leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, past president of the United States Conference of Mayors, Mayor Elizabeth Kautz of Burnsville, Minnesota.
Thank you, Tom, for your leadership and for creating these virtual meetings so that we can participate in these conventions. And thank you to our staff who work so hard to make these things become a reality. And to our president, President Fischer, thank you so much for your leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, this last few months have been hard for all of us. 2020 has awakened us to a stark reality of how global pandemic can affect our lives. We are in a health crisis. This health crisis has affected our businesses and our economy, and also racial justice. The tragedies of COVID-19 pandemic and what can no longer be denied is the brutal disparity of our health care system and employment devastation for too many of our citizens. Today, I want to continue to amplify and elevate how hard hit our small businesses and entrepreneurs have suffered during this pandemic. And they are in desperate need of additional funding. We have worked hard to do what we can for our cities and for our citizens, but more is needed. As you have heard from past President Bryan Barnett and Mayor Warren, that we need help. And so please reach out to your senators, because while 138 cities receive direct federal assistance, the rest of us are waiting for meaningful federal assistance and wanting us to ensure that our cities and businesses can stay open and to move towards thriving again. Of the approximately 30 million small businesses, nearly 11 million are at risk of closing permanently over the next coming months. Today, 35.7 million Americans employed by small businesses are at risk of unemployment as a result of the pandemic. Our small businesses are in desperate need of federal assistance, and they need it now. All of us mayors are working as hard as we can to do what we can for our small businesses. Here in Burnsville, the CARES Act funds we received from the state, we are sharing with our businesses. We have allocated $1.5 million to help our businesses and our nonprofit. $1 million to our small business and $500,000 to our nonprofits. We have offered grants of $20,000 in a lottery system. All businesses are eligible to apply. They must, however, meet the federal guidelines. We have made our application very simple. And through the Conference of Mayors initiative, Partner America, we established and continue it today, a hotline for small businesses owners. This is a collaboration between conference and the American Management Service. Struggling small business owners calling the hotline will receive one-on-one help. Owners are connected with experts who help them clarify their situation and options. In the best of circumstances, Partner America helps the small business owners develop strategies to save their businesses, which include cash flow analysis, banking relationships, possible lines of credit, personnel management, and liquidity, as well as any federal, state, and local opportunities. Partner America will help them analyze next steps to success. The hotline is still open and still up and staffed. So mayors, if you have small businesses needing help, you can call 1-855-876-5571, or feel free to call me and I will connect you. Let me give you a few possible positive examples of how USCM has helped businesses and some results. On April 20th, the USCM Small Business and Entrepreneurship Task Force, through its Partner America program, hosted an event providing advice on dealing with SBA programs, handling creditors, and strategies to survive in this new environment. Mayors from Westland, Michigan, Reno, Nevada, Ocala, Florida, and Burnsville, Minnesota, shared stories on how the Partner America program provided direction and assistance to them so that they could help their small businesses. Since that webinar was so successful and helpful to mayors, we will be hosting a follow-up webinar in October to provide additional assistance and information to help America's business succeed in these difficult times. My fellow mayors, it's a fact. Small businesses are the lifeblood of our US economy. They create 2/3 of the new jobs and drive innovation and competitiveness. Small businesses account for 44% of our nation's economic activity. So mayors, all of us foster our local economies by keeping money close to home and support our neighborhoods and communities and create much needed jobs. I am proud of the work we are all doing to help our small businesses, and I know we will all continue to do everything we can to support them during these unprecedented times. We want our businesses to get to the other side of this pandemic and begin to thrive again. Thank you, everyone. I hope that we can continue to work together for the good of our communities, our states, and our country. Tom, back to you.
Thank you so much, Madam Past President. And isn't she great? Another example of the women leaders in our organization. We heard Acquanetta, now we hear this incredible person of public service who continues to give her life and give us reason and keep us straight to represent the women mayors and make the guys a little bit stronger, right, Mayor Kautz? So from the Southwest now, we have Mayor John Giles. He is a voice of reason in our organization. Being on the border, he has been there with us to be vigilant on these border issues. He continues to be a voice for bipartisanship in our organization as we grow to be involved and support a more safer, stronger, modern infrastructure system. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear from Mesa Mayor John Giles.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you to my fellow Republican mayors with the U.S. Conference of Mayors. It really is an honor to serve with these great leaders. It is a stark contrast to how beautiful the women in our organization are to then have me be next on this program, but I'm happy to serve that role. I just want to say amen to the great messages that we've heard so far. Mesa, Arizona is a great place. But it is one of the larger cities in the United States. And so we were privileged to receive direct funding from the federal government. And I'm here to tell you that was a tremendous blessing, and that assistance has been utilized in a very responsible and very effective way in our community. We have, by receiving that money directly, for the last several months, we have been each week providing food assistance to thousands of individuals. We've given over 500 small business grants to the struggling businesses in our community that were not eligible for federal assistance. We've been able to provide distance learning devices for every school child in our community. And also we've prevented, I believe, countless instances of homelessness by providing housing assistance, rental assistance, and utility assistance. So I can tell you from firsthand experience, ladies and gentlemen, the national assistance that's been going to cities has been critical, it's been effective, and we need more. We all know this pandemic is not going to be over in a matter of weeks or months. And so the assistance needs to continue in order to avoid the catastrophic consequences that would result without it. I am also excited to join you as part of this Republican convention. I think like you, anxious for the Republican Party to send a very constructive message to the nation coming out of this convention. And when I say constructive, I'm speaking literally. I think it's important that the Republican Party have a concrete, constructive plan for the rebuilding and the maintenance of our community, of our communities and of our nation. I would be very proud if the Republican Party were known as the party that wants to build stuff and to get things done and to leave a legacy for our children and grandchildren. I am speaking to you today from the mayor's office, and you might hear literally some construction activity going on, because right outside the window of my office, there's a crane and there's lots of great people that are working on building a new building right next to this one. I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of the fact that we've been able to partner with local industries and with the federal government on some great projects during the course of this pandemic that have been a tremendous blessing to the economy of my community. Currently, we're in the process of building a new airport tower. We're extending our light rail system. And again, these are great public spending projects that are strengthening our community and leaving a long-lasting impact. But infrastructure is not just about streets and bridges and buildings. A lesson that has been brought home to me during the course of this pandemic is the need for the expansion of technology infrastructure in our communities. I'm sure I'm not the only one on this call that has been frustrated by the fact that several people in our home at a time are on the computer doing schoolwork, conducting meetings. And it has brought home to me the fact that this type of technology is an essential utility. And leaving this pandemic experience, one of the lessons learned for my community is going to be the importance of bridging the digital divide and using public resources to make that utility a reality in my community. Again, I think it's important leaving this convention, ladies and gentlemen, that we push our party leaders to make plans that we strategically invest to support jobs that leave a legacy for future generations. Let's not just prop up our economy with spending. Let's do it with spending that's going to leave a legacy and address a long-term problem. So again, it's been an honor to be with you. It's been an honor to share the screen with these great leaders that are having such a significant impact at the local level in our country. And I look forward to a great convention and look forward to serving with you as we go forward to continue to make America great. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mayor Giles. And as the mayor pointed out, there's been some questions of how those 38 cities that got money, how they're spending it, but he's a great example of how if you just give it to us, we know what to do with it. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for being on this. And I'm now so pleased to present to you the president of the United States Conference of Mayors, Greg Fischer. Mayor Fischer, he took the gavel July 1, just a few weeks ago. And since we met in Waterloo in December, and now we have these challenges, a lot of stuff has gone down. And so just in a few weeks, Mayor Fischer has led the mayors of this nation to adopt a Mayor's 2020 vision, the American Breakthrough. And we're all experiencing the continuing challenge of COVID-19, our economic crisis, and civil unrest. He continues to argue that America will break through, and mayors will continue, as we always have, to make our nation more compassionate with equity for all. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States Conference of Mayors from Louisville, Kentucky, Mayor Greg Fischer.
Thank you, Tom, and thanks to the entire conference staff. And it's a real honor today to join my fellow mayors virtually. Just as I'm deeply proud to serve my hometown as mayor of Louisville, I'm proud to serve as president of this great conference and proud to serve with this group of mayors who are incredible leaders, patriots, and friends. For all of us, for all Americans, this is an exciting and important moment in the process of democracy. The Democrats had their party convention last week. Today, the Republican convention begins. We're at a pivotal point in our ongoing national conversation about who we are as a country and what values should guide us in the years ahead. And naturally, America's mayors are an essential part of that conversation. The last several weeks, even as they were working night and day to manage their city's responses to COVID-19, the economic downturn, and renewed calls for racial justice, teams of mayors have been gathering virtually to discuss America's biggest challenges and how we can address them. The men and women who crafted this plan represent 86% of the nation's population. Our cities collectively account for 91% of America's GDP, and according to poll after poll over many years, the American people place more trust and faith in their local government than in state or federal government. Mayors and all local public servants, we're everybody's neighbor, and our neighbors count on us to produce tangible results. And that's true whether we're talking about everything from trash pickup to libraries, parks, 911 service, police and fire departments, public health, and a lot more. Mayors have to get things done, no matter the challenge. And right now, cities and towns across America are facing a combination of challenges unlike any of us have ever seen. The worst pandemic in 100 years, an economy more fragile and uncertain than it's been in 80 years, and long overdue calls for racial justice and equity that are more intense and widespread than we've seen in over 50 years. And let's be clear, while these crises affect all of us, they hit hardest in our communities of color. We've seen how social inequities have meant that Black and brown Americans are more likely to get sick and die of COVID-19, lose their jobs or their business to the economic downturn, or die at the hands of law enforcement. None of these are acceptable in our great country. The very existence and persistence of these disparities is more than tragic. It must be a call to action. That's why America's mayors decided to weigh in now, as the American people are listening to the different versions of America's future that are laid out in the speeches we're hearing at the party conventions. And while the conventions are partisan events, let me be clear that this is a bipartisan plan from the conference. It was crafted by Democrats and Republicans from all parts of the country, doing something all too rare in America these days, working together around a common vision and a common goal. We call it an American breakthrough. The Mayor's Vision for America outlines 10 priorities for us as a nation and steps that we can take to make them a reality. These goals are ambitious, but they're achievable. Here they are. Foster economic recovery for a stronger America. Dismantle systemic racism and advance human and civil rights. Achieve public safety and justice for all. Provide equitable, quality health care and human services. Rewrite the tax code to help hardworking taxpayers and reduce economic inequality. Make housing more affordable and address homelessness. Build modern, resilient infrastructure to address climate change, promote environmental justice, and enhance opportunity and productivity. strengthen education, improve career pathways, and develop the workforce of the future, fix our broken immigration system, and promote American business, goods, and tourism to the global economy. I want to thank all the mayors who participated in the 5 working groups that produced these recommendations, including Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, Cincinnati Mayor John Cranley, and Tampa Mayor Jane Castor, who led our police reform and racial justice work group. These recommendations were released earlier this month. While I would happily detail our plans to achieve the goals set out within each of these 10 priorities, let me focus on just 3. The first is fostering an economic recovery that produces a stronger America for all Americans. COVID-19 has claimed nearly 180,000 American lives now, devastated our economy, and once again revealed society's deep inequity. We've seen how Americans who are also members of racial and ethnic minority groups are at increased risk, in part because they're less likely to have health insurance and more likely to work in essential jobs that can't be done from home. The COVID-19 crisis has also exposed how infrastructure financing and the investment practices that govern our most basic services networks, including transportation, water, and energy systems, too often impose additional burdens on underserved and underrepresented people and their families. To create an economy worthy of America, all Americans, we have to rebuild an economy that works better than the one we lost in March. And so that means supporting small businesses, because small businesses across the country are facing enormous economic hardship, and many have already been forced to close, killing jobs and hurting local communities. Congress should provide new guidelines to spend the remaining $130 billion left in the Paycheck Protection Program and provide $120 billion to restaurants through the Bipartisan Restaurant Act. The federal government must also provide targeted assistance, such as direct compensation and debt forgiveness to minority and women-owned business enterprises, which are struggling to stay afloat in the pandemic, and to businesses in America's farming and rural communities. This conference represents America's cities, but we recognize and respect the plight and the importance of the farmers and farming communities that put food on America's tables. We are all in this together. And that's especially true now, because the question of how to put food on the table is getting harder to answer for millions of families that have experienced a loss of income due to COVID-19. That's why America's mayors urge Congress to pass the unemployment insurance extension to resume the $600 a week unemployment benefits boost until March of 21. Additionally, Congress should also pass the monthly Economic Crisis Support Act to put money directly into the hands of those hardest hit by the pandemic. And as we've been saying for months now, cities of all sizes across the country are experiencing significant revenue shortfalls as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and are in dire need of immediate and near-term infusions of direct, flexible federal aid distributed by formula to all municipalities, not just those with populations exceeding 500,000 people. Mayors are calling for direct and significant federal aid to cities of at least $250 billion of fiscal assistance over and above state aid, which must be provided immediately to get cities through budgeting for the next fiscal year 21, without being forced to cut essential services like frontline public health workers, police, and firefighters. The second priority I want to highlight is dismantling systemic racism and advancing human and civil rights. To do that, we first have to understand and accept that ending racism in America is the responsibility of every American. And it's to the benefit of every American, because ensuring that every American has a fair shot at the American dream makes our entire country stronger and more prosperous. To do that, we must acknowledge the history and legacy of racist policies and practices like redlining and urban renewal, policies that robbed Black Americans of the opportunity to build and pass on generational wealth. America's governments and institutions are complicit in establishing and perpetuating systems that have produced a host of cruel racial disparities, including the fact that the average white family in America has 10 times the wealth of the average Black family. To address this disparity and to ensure that every American has the chance to realize their full human potential, we must take other steps that include consistently and unreservedly enforcing the Federal Fair Housing Act, which helps local governments address discrimination and segregated housing patterns and take action to remedy past housing discrimination. Establishing a federal commission to study and propose reparations for African Americans. Supporting and working to achieve passage of the Equal Rights Amendment and the implementation of policies that ensure genuine economic equality for women. Supporting LGBTQ rights and working toward guaranteeing them in every city and in the nation as a whole. And reviving civility and respect by listening to people who have different views, supporting efforts to work together across ideological and political lines, and working to rebuild civic trust through civil discourse, particularly during election seasons. In fact, I hope everyone who reads our mayor's vision for America understands that there is one goal, one priority that underlies all the others, and it's this: America's mayors are eager to work with our fellow public servants in Washington. And that's the third priority I want to highlight: the urgent need to establish a stronger local federal partnership, a partnership that's more effective, efficient, and accountable to the American people. Our country is facing too many challenges, too many threats for any one faction to defeat them alone. We must address these human challenges with our principles, but without partisanship. As mayors, we see the human impact of the challenges our country is facing up close every day. And we see something else as well: the resilience and resourcefulness of the American people. Because as formidable as our challenges may be, none of them are greater than the capacity of the American people to overcome them if we work together. If we decide it's finally time to turn the page on partisanship, division, and racism. If we accept that we have to own our history, all of it, the proud moments and the painful, and make the choice to seize the opportunity of this challenging moment and transform our country. That's how we create an American breakthrough. The invitation from America's mayors is this: let's learn from our past, live fully in the present, and create a future for America that offers equity, justice, and opportunity for all. Thank you. Tom?
Thank you so much, Mr. President. And we look forward, as we go forward, to work with you and the other mayors as we have our virtual leadership meeting in Louisville, Kentucky. And that's going to take place in late September. Thank you for continuing to push us forward in the virtual world that we live in. You're wonderful. Thank you so much. Our last speaker comes from the great city of Miami. You know, over 100 years ago, we've read about, how New York was a melting pot and they all came. Today, ladies and gentlemen, when you go to Miami, you're not in Miami, you're in half the world. People who are coming to that great city of all cultural backgrounds. And he's coming in as our second vice president. He will be the 80th president of this organization. Now, if you look at the past, his understanding of cities, it comes from somewhere. And, his daddy was mayor. Xavier and I worked together many years ago. And I know, as so many, we have fathers that were mayors, sons that were mayors throughout this organization. But we have this special one now that has a father who was also mayor. And here's what I want to say about this guy. He represents so much of the future for the United States Conference of Mayors, for the state of Florida, for our nation, and I'll just go ahead and say it, and for the Republican Party. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad to present to you, to sum up our meeting today, this great meeting we've had on the eve of this Republican convention, the second vice president of the United States Conference of Mayors, Francis Suarez of Miami.
Kautz, Giles, and President Fischer. As mayors, we are the first responders of American government. We know our residents. We serve them, we stand up for them, and we support them in their hour of need. Mayors are unlike any other set of elected officials. We keep the streets safe. We care for the parks and schools. We look out for our residents' wellness and health. We are their first line of defense for help. And the U.S. Conference of Mayors stands with all of our mayors from all parties and all cities all the way. As Republican mayors, we know especially that government exists to serve the people, and that the government closest to the people is the government that serves them best. We know that balancing our budget means keeping taxes low and spending on point. We know that we must be tough on crime and tough on the causes of crime. We know that our civil rights are based on the rule of law and equal justice. And we know that our prosperity rests on economic incentives and tax policies that encourage creativity, initiative, innovation, and ownership. More Americans live in cities than ever before. They want to live in neighborhoods that are safe, diverse, and dynamic. But they want to live in more than just neighborhoods. They want to live in a community that cares for each other, sustains each other, and protects each other. Right now, we need practical solutions and inclusive leadership to face the very real challenges that transcend any party, ideology, or partisanship. And as Republicans, we believe that, like America, every American city should be a shining city on a hill for all its residents and newcomers. This is why the U.S. Conference of Mayors is unveiling its bipartisan Mayors 2020 Vision and American Breakthrough Report that taps into the American spirit of innovation, generosity, and can-do commitment to growth. It is practical and principled. It builds on the American tradition of common sense, fairness, and freedom for all. 36 years ago, Ronald Reagan said that the choice is not one of left or right, but a choice of up or down. Whether we fall back to the failed ideology of socialism or advance and expand the frontiers of American freedom. President Reagan's remarks ring true even today. In Miami, we've witnessed the power and generosity of American freedom and fairness, where hundreds of thousands of people escaping socialism have found incredible levels of economic opportunity, human dignity, political inclusion, and full integration as proud new Americans. While others will focus on partisanship and personality, we must focus on policies and performance. Over the past 3 years, we have worked with the administration on opening opportunity for everyone, from opportunity zones and competitive tax policies to expanding global trade under the USMCA agreement to affordable housing and expanded employment opportunities. Under the administration's tax reforms and opportunity zones, our cities have seen a surge in economic activity, job creation, and new construction. Miami has had back-to-back years of 10% growth with 8 to 10 billion of new construction annually. This has provided well-paying jobs to our residents from every race, ethnicity, culture, and color. We continue to work with the administration on combating the spread of COVID-19 and urge Congress to do its job and provide direct aid to American cities most affected by the virus. Now more than ever, the U.S. Conference of Mayors stands ready to provide solutions to the most complex issues facing Americans. Now more than ever, mayors must lead and must provide answers when our federal and state governments remain gridlocked. Now more than ever, the U.S. Conference of Mayors will be the U.S. Conference of Solutions for all leaders across the country, promoting innovation, investment, and inclusion. We are here for you. We are mayors, and mayors get it done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Suarez. And let us all wish everyone involved in this great Republican convention to be safe. And also, let's face it, to have some fun, because we have to understand in America, democracy thrives when we all come together to be a part of it. And let us all pray with a fervent hope that once these fireworks are over in these both conventions, that the leaders of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party and independents all come together to really work on providing the emergency fiscal assistance that's been mentioned in this session today, was mentioned last week with the Democratic mayors. It is a bipartisan issue. And so thank you all for being on this program today. And again, God bless America, and God bless our president and all involved in the Republican convention this week. Thank you very much.